I grew up in Iowa, where it was all farmlands, and the only buildings I knew or I saw were barns. Until I went to a school trip and we went to Chicago and we went to the Museum of Science and Industry and we saw this house that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And I was so inspired and this is what I want to do. I want to design houses like this. And his house was one that was called a Usonian house, which is all about connecting with nature, using alternative materials in a way that can be affordable. And that really stuck with me. There weren't many female architects, definitely in Iowa at the time. And luckily, I was just supported by lots of people who seemed to not notice my gender all the way through. And it was just more about the quality of the conversation and the quality of the work. I first started at a university that didn't even offer architecture. So I tried to make this balance between civil engineering and interior design, which was ridiculous because that's just not how to study architecture. And then I finally transferred to a school that had architecture, and as soon as I did, I loved it. And I just wouldn't even go home. I just stayed in my studio at school all the time. And then after school, I started working for Frank Gehry, working on museums. And one of the very first projects that was built while I was there was the Guggenheim in Bilbao. And when I went to see that building and saw people who were coming into the atrium space literally crying because they were so moved by the design, I realized that we can have a big impact, a positive impact on people's lives. When I moved to Northern California and started looking for a house with my husband, I realized that there's this whole world of housing that is not that well designed, not that healthy, and still unaffordable for so many people, and realized that I could try to do something about that. And that's when I realized there's this world of prefabrication, and if we embrace that and think about it differently, we can make good design available to everybody. I did start this company. I bought my own factory. We built all these homes. We had success in many ways, but we also were working with factory partners. And when in 2009, when housing was in complete crisis, we had 2 factory partners go bankrupt at the same time. It was so painful, and we had to close our company, and it was the worst. I had this fellow send me an email, and he said, I'm really sorry to hear this. This happened to me as well. I had a company that I started, and I had to close it, and it was the hardest thing I ever did. But then I invented the iPod. And so this person was Tony Fidel, who now runs Nest. And that gave me a little bit of hope, like, okay, maybe there can be a chapter after this. And then luckily there are lots of people who have been through failure before, who see failure as just a part of ways to get to success, that you don't actually get to success most times without having these steps and learnings along the way. And it's really how we handle those failures and how we can embrace those learnings that help us to actually succeed at things that we otherwise didn't think were possible. So I started working at Google X with Astro Teller and Sebastian Thrun, who have this philosophy of moonshot thinking, of how to look at the world's biggest challenges, biggest problems, and look for ways to come up with audacious, tough solutions of how to address these problems. And buildings are one of the biggest challenges that our Earth has. Buildings require more energy and create more carbon than any other industry. There are many materials that are used in typical buildings that are not healthy for people, that cause cancer and allergies. And at the same time, there's so many people in the world who don't have access to safe, durable buildings. So what if we make all of that available to free for everyone? So each time you start a new building, you are starting from the very best building that was built before. There's something about being a female that allows us, because society doesn't put the same pressures on us as they do on our male counterparts who are architects, that we don't it's not expected of us to do the grand, big, huge tower that is super famous and everyone knows it and that's how you think about architecture. But we can actually have big impact even thinking about a single house, or think about a room or a space that will actually impact the way people learn, and when they're young, how it can impact their health. That, for me, is where we can really transform things. And I think being a woman helps that.